You know that feeling when you're in a room full of people. Everyone's laughing, talking, doing what people do. And you're right there with them, physically present. But inside, there's this quiet distance, like you're watching the whole thing through glass. And the strange part, it's not that you don't like people. It's not that you're shy or broken or difficult. It's something you've never quite been able to explain. Society told you that being smart was the ultimate advantage, that a sharp mind meant an easier life, that intelligence was the lottery ticket. But nobody, and I mean nobody, told you about the other side of that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Here's the story we're all taught from the beginning. Smart people have it figured out. The gifted kid becomes the successful adult. The brilliant mind rises to the top. And look, there's a version of that which is true. Intelligence does help with certain things. Processing information faster, seeing patterns others miss, making connections across ideas. But here's what that story quietly leaves out. Intelligence doesn't just make you better at solving problems. It completely changes how your mind interacts with the world. A highly intelligent person doesn't just see solutions more quickly. They also see more complexity, more contradictions, more of the things that could go wrong in every single situation they're in. And that's where things get complicated, because intelligence, genuine intelligence, doesn't automatically lead to peace or happiness or that sense of belonging that everyone around you seems to just have. In many cases, it creates a set of psychological challenges that most people never have to think about. Psychologists have a phrase for this, a strong need for cognition. And honestly, when I first read that, it felt like someone had finally named something I couldn't put words to. For most people, thinking is a tool. You pick it up when you need it, you put it down when you don't. But for someone with a highly active mind, thinking isn't a tool, it's the permanent condition. Researchers sometimes call it the internal motor, this mental engine that keeps running long after the external world has gone completely quiet. You finish a conversation, and then even though it's over, your mind isn't finished with it. You're replaying the tone of voice, the pause before someone answered, the specific word they chose instead of a different one. Picture it like this. It's 2 a.m. The house is completely dark. There's nothing demanding your attention, and your mind is simultaneously replaying an argument from 3 years ago, planning a conversation that might happen next week, and somewhere in the middle of all that, genuinely wondering about the nature of time. That's not insomnia. That's the internal motor doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is, it wasn't built with an off switch. And here's where that internal motor creates a problem that most people don't talk about. When your brain can simulate every possible outcome of a decision, every risk, every consequence, every version of how things could go wrong, making a decision doesn't get easier. It gets harder. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis, and it's one of the crueler ironies of a highly active mind. The same intelligence that makes you exceptional at understanding problems can also make you completely unable to move past them. You're not stuck because you don't know enough. You're stuck because you know too much. You can see the angles that other people aren't even aware of. And so you stay there, in that space between understanding and action, running the calculation one more time, just to be sure. Just in case you missed something. There's something else that comes with this kind of mind, and it took me a long time to even recognize it as a burden. When your brain is wired to find patterns, it finds them everywhere. In conversations, you hear what people aren't saying. In systems, you see the cracks that everyone else has learned to step around. In relationships, you detect tensions that haven't surfaced yet, sometimes weeks before they do. At first, genuinely, this feels like a superpower. You understand things quickly, you read rooms, you see what's coming. But here's the part nobody tells you. You cannot unsee what you've seen. Once you understand how something really works, the machinery underneath, you can't pretend you don't. Most people move through their days protected by a comfortable layer of not quite noticing. It's not ignorance exactly, it's more like a natural filter, a way of not taking in more than you need to. The highly perceptive mind doesn't have that filter. It takes everything in, all the time. And that clarity, as useful as it is, carries a weight that's genuinely hard to put down. A Polish psychologist named Kazimierz Dombrowski spent decades observing gifted and highly intelligent individuals, and what he found was something that honestly changed how I think about this whole conversation. Highly intelligent people don't just think more intensely than others, they feel more intensely. They experience the world at a completely different volume. He called it overexcitability, which is this idea that certain people's nervous systems respond to everything, thoughts, emotions, sensations, imagination, with far greater intensity that is considered average. So what does that actually look like? A piece of music doesn't just sound beautiful, it physically moves through you. A crowded room doesn't just feel busy, it genuinely feels overwhelming. Someone else's pain doesn't just register, it lands in you like it's your own. The world isn't louder for you, but your capacity to receive it completely is. So that means beauty can feel breathtaking in a way that stops you mid-step, but it also means suffering, injustice, the senseless cruelty of certain things hits equally hard, maybe harder. The challenge isn't managing your thoughts, it's learning how to live at full psychological volume in a world that was never quite designed with you in mind. Here's something that might feel uncomfortably familiar. When you can see clearly, specifically, what the ideal version of something looks like, reality is almost always going to disappoint you. Not because you're setting unrealistic expectations, but because your mind is genuinely capable of imagining the better version, in detail. The optimal outcome, the more elegant solution, the version of yourself that is fully living up to what you know you're capable of. In the gap between that vision and what actually exists is a very specific kind of painful. What other people would consider a genuine success can feel to you like a compromise because you already know, in exact detail, what the better version would have been. Psychologists call this gifted burnout, and it's not the burnout of doing too much, it's the burnout of potential, the quiet exhaustion of constantly measuring yourself against a version of yourself that exists only in your own mind. The fear of wasting what you have becomes louder than any satisfaction in what you've actually built. One of the most exhausting things about having a mind like this, and I don't think people talk about this enough, is how much energy goes into just fitting in. Highly intelligent people tend to crave conversations that actually go somewhere, ideas that don't resolve neatly, questions with genuine weight to them, the kind of exchange where both people leave the conversation slightly different than when they started. But most social environments aren't built for that. They're built for small talk, light topics, the comfortable rhythm of conversation that keeps things smooth. And so, over time, many highly intelligent people learn a strategy. They mask, they simplify their language, they hold back the part of them that wants to push the conversation somewhere deeper, because they've learned, often painfully, that not every room has space for it. And here's the part nobody warned you about that strategy. When you mask for long enough, you can start to lose track of where the performance ends and where you actually begin. There's a form of depression that psychologists describe as existential depression, and it's different from what most people think of when they hear that word. It doesn't come from something going wrong in your life necessarily. It comes from going too deep into the questions that most people, quite wisely, don't spend too long sitting with. Questions like, what actually matters here? What is any of this for? In the full scale of what exists, what does any individual life actually mean? Highly intelligent minds tend to reach these questions earlier than most, and they don't pass through them quickly. They sit in them, they turn them over, they live with the discomfort of not having answers, sometimes for years. And what happens then is the ordinary details of daily life can start to feel strangely disconnected from the larger questions occupying your mind. Paying bills, making small talk at parties, going through the motions of routines that feel disconnected from anything that actually matters. What makes the highly intelligent mind genuinely complicated to live in isn't any one of these things individually. It's that they exist together in contradiction with each other. You can see exactly what's wrong with the system and feel completely powerless to change it. You can feel things with extraordinary depth and struggle to put any of it into words that feel remotely accurate. You can dream of contributing something genuinely meaningful to the world and spend most of your days inside the same ordinary routines as everyone else. These aren't contradictions that resolve themselves. They're the permanent texture of a certain kind of mind, and learning to live inside them rather than fighting against them is one of the most genuinely difficult things about having a mind like this. The deeper you think about life, the stranger it can feel to simply be inside it. You might be surrounded by people who genuinely like you and still feel completely unseen. Here's the thing though, and I think this is important. The real problem isn't the intelligence itself, it's the isolation that so often comes with it. When a highly intelligent person spends too long feeling fundamentally out of sync with the people around them, that's when the mind starts turning inward in ways that aren't healthy. But when they find people who operate on a similar wavelength, people who actually want the conversation to go somewhere, something genuinely shifts. What felt like alienation starts to feel like, oh, there you are. That's it. That's the whole thing, actually. Not fixing yourself, not quieting the mind, not pretending the hollow isn't there. Just finding the people who see it and don't need you to explain it. The restlessness you feel, that's not a malfunction. The sensitivity, not a weakness. The distance you sometimes feel from the people around you, that's not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that you are wired differently. Indifferent, genuinely, is not broken. The hollow in your chest is not something to be filled. It's not a problem to solve. It's not the part of you that needs fixing. It is the space where your depth lives. If any of this felt true for you, tell me which part in the comments. You don't have to explain, just a letter is enough. And if this is the kind of conversation you've been looking for, Psyquilab is exactly that, every single week. See you in the next one.